Welcome to you all. Welcome to this video introduction to Bible Month in June 2020, which this year is concentrating on the book of Ruth. And thanks to Phil Poole, our Superintendent Minister here in Wrexham Circuit, for asking me to introduce Ruth to you all. A group of us are reading through the Bible more or less cover to cover. We began at the very beginning, it being a very good place to start. And it has to be said that we found some of the earlier books hard going. So when we came to Ruth, we fell on it as a thirsty traveller in the desert falls on an oasis. Ruth is a delightful book. The German poet Goethe called it the loveliest little epic and idyllic whole that tradition has given us. The book is set in a time before Israel has a king, so it's set towards the end of the time of the judges, people like Samson. There appears to be some stability, but the precarious position of women without men is clear. The book itself was written some centuries after that, probably just after the exile in Babylon. The story itself is simple enough. Naomi is married to Elimelech, and they have two sons. Due to a famine, they leave Bethlehem and go into Moab, maybe 150 miles, east of the River Jordan and the Dead Sea. There, the two sons marry two Moabite women, Orpah and Ruth. Sadly, the men all die, and Naomi decides she must return to Jerusalem because there is now plenty of food there. Initially, both her daughters-in-law come with her, but Orpah eventually returns to Moab. Ruth comes with her mother-in-law to Bethlehem, and because of her good reputation and maybe the odd feminine wile, she wins the hand of Boaz. Ruth and Boaz have a son, Obed, the grandfather of King David. And that is how Ruth, a Moabite woman, a foreigner, comes to appear in the genealogy of Jesus. Why do we think the book was written so much later than the events it portrays? Well, Ruth is written in Hebrew, but with strong Aramaic influences. And Aramaic was widely used during this Persian period. It's a bit like finding a book set in the time of Geoffrey Chaucer, which uses the English of Charles Dickens. Yet notice the difference. And there are some customs in the book which the book needs to explain to the readers. I'll just read chapter 4, verse 7. Now this was the custom in former times in Israel concerning the redeeming and exchanging. To confirm a transaction, one party took off a sandal and gave it to the other. This was the manner of attesting in Israel. The legal custom of exchanging sandals seems a bit daft to us, but it would certainly be remembered by the witnesses. This is a time when there are no legal documents that are written, so society would need other ways to ensure that oaths and agreements were honoured. But that's all a bit technical. What we have is a lovely story, though as with many lovely stories, there are dark themes. At one level, it's a story of a man meeting a woman and living happily ever after. But Ruth and Naomi move because of famine. And there are plenty of pictures of people moving today because of famine and war and climate change. And some of the stories we hear and some of the pictures we see are really quite distressing and bring home the reality of the desperation of people. Then Ruth and Naomi survive initially through gleaning. Farmers were encouraged to be wasteful so that those in need could glean and gather food. A holy wastefulness that we would do well to learn from. 100% efficiency is destroying the planet. And don't forget that Ruth is a Moabite, a foreigner. She isn't Jewish. But through her, God brings blessing. In other books, such as Ezra, foreign wives were banned. And Moab had history with Israel. According to Deuteronomy, Moabites were excluded from the company of the faithful because they failed to help the Israelites when they were coming into the promised land. Those events were some centuries before the events of the book, and many more before the book was actually written down. But folk memory can be persistent. I heard the story of two villages in East Anglia that were next to each other. They were neighbours, and there was a real animosity between the two. A local historian did some research and concluded that one village blamed the other for not telling them that the Vikings were coming over 1,000 years earlier. Ruth counteracts that folk memory and reminds us that even those we consider enemies are still our fellow human beings. Moabite lives matter. And the turmoil we're in at the moment tells us that that is a vital godly message. Black lives matter. It is a story of faithfulness. Ruth is faithful to Naomi, Boaz is faithful to the law, and both reflect God's loving kindness and faithfulness. And through their loving kindness and faithfulness, we see that God is present. It's a story of courage, acceptance, and welcome. A pleasant change from some of the stories currently in our news. So I hope you enjoy your journey through Ruth this Bible month. Goodbye, and may God bless you.